Greetings, I'm Carl Richards, and welcome to the Elementality podcast. So excited to have Justin Green on today. Justin, how are you?
I'm doing good, Carl. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Yeah, joining us from North Carolina, is that right?
Yeah, we just recently moved to North Carolina, so we'd been in Massachusetts for a while. My wife was doing some travel nursing, so we bounced around the United States for the year before that, and we just settled down here in Raleigh, North Carolina.
Very cool. Very cool. I would love to ask you a bunch of questions about North Carolina. My wife, for some reason, loves North Carolina, but we don't have time. That's a different show, Justin. A different
Cool.
show.
Yeah, we'll do it. We'll do another show on North Carolina. Maybe I'll know the history by then.
Exactly. Prepare for that. Let's start. Let's start with like an origin story. Like, why did you get into the profession? Let's call it the profession of providing financial advice. Why did you get into it in the first place?
Because selling cheerleading uniforms wasn't going to cut it. And I'll explain what that means. So, we'll back it up. I come from a low income family. I was the first one to go to college in my family. And because I was 18 and I had no clue what I wanted to do, but I liked business and I liked sports, I went and got a sports management degree. Probably the worst degree you can get, in my opinion. And so I got that degree, and then I'm like, well, what the heck am I going to do with this thing? And so it actually led me out to Manhattan, Kansas. I was working at a sportswear company selling youth cheerleading uniforms for a couple of years. And as fun as that was, I was just like trying to figure out on my own, like, all right, how do I build wealth? Like, I have no experience with this. I didn't even know what the stock market was until after college. I didn't grow up with wealth. I didn't grow up having an uncle with wealth. I knew nothing. And so I started just kind of going on my own like personal journey to learn more about financial planning, et cetera. So I went down this path for myself. And that's when I was like, I really like this. Like, I think I could do more with this. And so I started looking into different programs. And that's when I actually found my way back to Kansas State University, got my master's in personal financial planning. And then I finished that up and just hopped into a fee-only firm back in Massachusetts. So that's like the short consolidated version.
Yeah. Well, that's I like that. Thank you. And I'm going to ask the question again from a slightly different perspective. Like, why did you, like, now that you've been in I'm going to use this term business or industry, but I'm speaking really broadly because there's a subset of the industry that are what I call real financial advisors. And, for people who listen to that often, like when I tell people about real financial advisors, sometimes people don't even believe that they exist.
Mm-hmm.
But so often people think we're part of a big industry, which we are. But back to the question, why get into the profession of financial advice? Like, what was the reason you did it? What was the dream?
So I saw how impactful it was for myself coming from the situation I did. And so I wanted to help others do the same. I wanted to help individuals who maybe were the first in their family to go to college. Maybe they didn't go to college, but they were entrepreneurial and they wanted to change generations to come in their family and build wealth and show future generations this is how you build wealth through ownership of, business, real estate, stocks, whatever it is. Because what I found as well was once I started going down that personal journey, not only did I realize I really enjoyed the process of learning about, how to build wealth, it also reminded me that I had an entrepreneurial spirit that I had kind of tucked away and hid for quite a while. And so I really found a way to I had this dream, like, how can I help individuals who have this entrepreneurial spirit, but they know absolutely nothing about money? How do I help them build wealth and then change, the trajectory of their bloodline for years and years to come?
Ooh, so curious about so many things. Why? Tell me more about that. Like, why did it matter to you to build wealth and change the trajectory of, I think you used the word bloodline, for years and years to come? Why is that important?
So we can, there's studies that show that, after you make like 70,000, and the study is a little outdated, so I would argue this number might be higher now, but the studies show that like at 70,000, happiness is no longer impacted by, or at $70,000 worth of income, like that's the highest. Like once you hit that, money's not going to make you any happier, right? And so if you've ever actually been poor or come from a low income family, you do know that money actually matters, right? So there is a level, and I do agree that once you hit a level, like your lifestyle choices will change. But at the end of the day, it's not really going to change your happiness, right? You might have a more expensive car, a fancier car, but like at a certain level, you have a running car that works and gets you from A to B.
Right.
But if you're under that level, like you truly do see the impact of money on your lifestyle, your health, your opportunities, your flexibility, all of that. And so I saw how that could be available to more people, and I just wanted to spread that.
Yeah. Can you give me an example of, like, maybe even from your own life, like what's an example of an impact on your health or your, your family situation? Like, can you think of an example of like, oh my gosh, when this first occurred to me, or when I was first able to do this?
Let me think. Probably getting health insurance. So my mom used to carry the health insurance. She passed away when I was in college, and so I went uninsured for a couple of years. Had some medical debts that when I had turned 18, it was like a week after I was 18, I had my wisdom teeth taken out, and that bill came due, and I had no clue, and I didn't really realize it fell on my shoulders, and my parents had no clue and kind of just tossed it in the trash because, well, there was other bills to pay.
Right.
And so, I went to get, years later, I went to get a car loan, and they were like, hey, you got a credit score? And I was like, no, I really have never taken out debt, never had a credit card, etc. They're like, you sure? And I was like, you know something I don't, so let's just talk about it. And found out that my credit score was pretty bad because I had this debt on there that I honestly had no clue, right?
Oh,
So that was one of the early on in my life, I realized, like,
yeah.
okay, money matters, right? I can't get health insurance, because I don't really have the money. And so I would avoid going to the doctors. I would avoid, and I was young. Luckily, I was young and pretty healthy. So there wasn't like any emergent situations where I like avoided it. But having health insurance there would have been pretty important. And I just didn't have the money to go out and get it.
Yeah. Isn't that crazy? Like, to think about that, that one of the things you have to think about when you're sick or somebody's injured or something, the first thought is like, oh, I hope they're okay. And then so many times, and because I've been in a situation where, like, my daughter tears her ACL, and you have this thought of like, oh my gosh, I hope she's okay, it's gonna be okay. And then there's this crazy thought that comes, is it like, oh, how are we gonna pay for that?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just crazy. Yeah. Tell me, given that this sort of dream of helping people understand, like, money matters, understanding wealth, change, a family tradition, right? Who's your work for now?
So I work with online health and fitness coaches, and part of the reason for that is when I was kind of going on that personal journey for me, I was really involved in like learning about personal finances, but I was also really involved in fitness. And when I kind of came to this like path in the road where I was figuring out, which way am I going to go with this, and I thought about becoming a fitness coach and just learning about finance for my own personal benefit. And ultimately, obviously, I decided finances, and then later on, it was like full circle moment where I was like, I'm going to do this for online health and fitness coaches. And that's kind of expanded a little bit. I get a lot of just online coaches in general because they have the same problems. And usually they'll have like a personality where they enjoy fitness, right? So I'm dealing with the same persona. It's just they're not technically a health and fitness coach. And what I found, and early on, this wasn't intentional, but I realized a lot of them have problems with so I've kind of gotten away from, like, originally I thought it was like to build wealth for generations, etc., and that's still like there, but
Right.
another thing I discovered was that like taxes are a huge issue for these individuals, and not knowing that you need to pay your taxes will kill you, but doing it incorrectly, and then when it finally catches up to you, could just like implode your whole everything you've built, right? And I never really connected these dots, but that actually happened to my father. So we lived a probably like decent middle class family, and he ran a painting business, like a house painting business. And my dad had a ninth grade education, so he knew how to do things, but the business side was just beyond him. And so he was really good at painting houses. He'd get people to come paint houses for him. But what happened was they were mischaracterized. I think this is how it went because I was young, but they were mischaracterized as 1099 employees. Well, eventually the IRS comes knocking and says, hey, they're actually W-2 employees. Therefore, you should have been withholding, FICA taxes, etc. You owe 70 grand. And like to my father, that was the nail in the coffin. Like everything changed. I think he probably still owes that money to this day because at that point he was having health issues and everything, and it was just like, all right, the dream is over, right? And so when I started working with individuals who were in the online coaching space, and I realized, wow, you guys are really amazing coaches, you don't know anything about money and business, and you're not paying anything into your taxes. Let's fix that, because this will change your life quicker than anything out there. And so I started connecting the dots with that. So I work with them, and we focus a lot on not just saving and building wealth, but also, how do we save you on taxes, and how do we make sure that everything is kosher?
Yeah, that story of your dad's amazing. Like, and the one sentence that really landed for me was the dream was over. It's so interesting to think about. Like because it sounds, I mean, you can hear it in your voice, like the work you do, you're passionate about that work, and you're working with people who are probably pretty passionate about their work.
Oh, absolutely. Most coaches become coaches because they love whatever it is they're coaching, right? Health and fitness, mindset, life coaching, marketing coach, sales coach, whatever it is, they love that craft. And that's why they're coaching. It's, making $1 million a year is kind of just a side effect of that. I mean, it's nice, don't get me wrong. I mean, not a whole lot of people are complaining about that, but it's really usually the really good ones. That's really not why they got into the business.
So it's interesting to me, right, that they got into coaching because they love coaching. They love their clients. They love the transformation they see with clients. They love the change they're making. But then you circle back to your dad's story, and you're like, and not knowing one little thing, the dream is over, right? You're and there's nothing wrong necessarily with throwing boxes at UPS. But right, like you could be back throwing boxes at UPS when your goal was to run this gym.
And it just comes down to, you don't know what you don't know either, right? It's not like they were being intentional about, getting around it. Sure. They just don't know what they don't know. And a lot of advisors sometimes scoff at how simple and basic these things are. And it's just like trying to remember is like, we know so much more than the average individual does about personal finance.
Yeah. And your specific, the clients that you enjoy working with know so much more about whatever they're coaching on, specifically fitness, that it's easy for people. I think it's easy for people to understand in those domains that, like, yeah, it's not because you're dumb, and it's not because you couldn't do it yourself. Like, you probably could if you just really wanted to grit your teeth and focus on it. It's because you're focused on something else. Right. And it's like, I go to the gym now. When I go to the gym, I don't even like to know why my coach has programmed what he's programmed. I just want to be told what to do, because I don't have time or the space cognitively in my head to learn that. So I'm super glad somebody else knows that. That doesn't make me dumb. I mean, maybe it does, but it doesn't make me dumb or lazy. Again, maybe it does. It just means that I know somebody else who's got domain expertise, and I can get someplace way faster if I just rely on them.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're an expert in your field. And so you understand relying on other experts in other fields is extremely important. And that's one of the cool things about working with coaches is they get that, right? So they know I'm the expert in my field. Obviously, they're the expert in their lives. And so we have to appreciate that. But,
I like that.
For the most part, they're going to rely and trust that I know the finance side of things and I have their best interest in mind. Now, every now and then you'll get some people who they do want the education. Like you were saying, like, I don't really want to know why. You do get individuals who are just wired that way. They do want to know why, but a lot of times And I learned this as I went on, because I would more explain the why, how the sausage is made, etc. They're really successful business owners. They don't have the time or the energy. They just want you to tell them, here's what to do and here's why, not like all the, unnecessary detail in between.
Yeah. Yeah. When you look at clients that you've worked with for, a little bit of time, so you've got some history with them. Tell me a story or two about the change that you've seen happen that you're most excited that you got to be involved in.
Yeah. So, first and foremost, one thing I'm focused on is progress, not perfection, because I do work with a lot of younger individuals, and they're between the ages of 21 and 35, and they're really successful, high revenue coaches, and they come in with pretty much nothing done yet. And so what we're trying to do is not get them from like A to Z, right? We got to start incrementally and go from A to B. And so a lot of times I do some cash flow work up front, and it's just, I didn't realize I was going to do so much cash flow work, but it's the reality of
what is that? Work. Justin, hold on for just a second. Explain real quickly, just to me,
what cash flow
is. That mean? What does that mean? Cash flow work?
Yeah, just the money coming in and out of your bank account. Cash flow is a term that I try to avoid, but I do use it way too much. But it's a financial lingo, but it's just the money coming in and out of your bank account. So the revenue and your expenses, essentially.
Yeah. And so doing that, so keep going with your story. Sorry to interrupt. I just want to make sure I was on the same page.
Yeah. So, we always have to start there, right? Because that's a pulse of your business, which, reality is if you're like a small business owner or solopreneur, which, you just own your own business and have maybe no team, your business is like the life of your financial plan. So we really can't figure out your personal financial plan. We can't really do that until we figure out your business and make sure the finances there are in order. So that way we can figure out, how do you pay yourself? And so I have one client, and to get to the actual story part, who she makes an extremely high revenue. And so honestly, she can spend whatever she wants and she's going to be fine because she leans frugal. But we're having a really hard time figuring out, what is she actually spending? And right. We're, like for probably like 5 or 6 months, I'm trying to get to this figure, and like, we're not making any progress. And I'm getting to the point where I think I'm going to probably get fired, right? Because I'm not getting results. And, long story short, she's working with another, like a CPA who's also an advisor on like the business side. And she's like moved some accounts over there that I didn't have because I don't require management, but I was just like, man, it just doesn't make sense. Why is she working with 2 of us? And so I started getting all this head trash, and we had this meeting after like, I don't know, like 6 to 7 months. And, shameless plug for Elements. This is my first Elements meeting with her. And we simplified everything. I had tried to skip too many steps. We were too far ahead, and I had to bring this down to the basics. And I showed her why it's so important we understand what she's actually spending, not because she's going to run out of money, but just because it factors into so many, I don't want to use equations, but that is the right term, equations just for different situations, right? Like understanding, if she ever wanted to take a year off, like how much does she need there? If she ever wanted to pivot to a different project, right? She's 24. So talking about retirement doesn't make sense. Put that away. She just started living her dream life. Why are we going to talk about stopping that? Right. So put that away, right? So getting her in this meeting, it clicked for her, like why that number matters, right? And so we just got her into Rocket Money just to, categorize transactions. This is on the personal side, by the way. She's got a really good bookkeeping system on the business side that was all set. We just couldn't figure out on the personal side, like what was she spending? Didn't really matter. She wasn't overspending, but we needed to know what it was. And so she went from like not looking at the numbers, not tracking it at all, to finally tracking everything in Rocket Money, formerly known as Truebill, which is a really good free tool out there that I sometimes recommend to clients who need a tool. And what we found is she was mixing a lot of personal and business expenses. And so just having her do this got everything cleaned up. We had already cleaned up 90% of it. We realized, some things are sneaking through here. And so that was like a really eye-opening discovery process for her to like, we've got to fix that. And then like, oh, cool, I only spent this much this month. And then she's like sending me these check-ins every week. And she's like excited of seeing where her
Right.
money is going.
Right.
So excited. She actually posted the 1-page plan on her Instagram. It was like so many big breakthroughs this week. This was a week after I thought I was getting fired, right? So I'm going in this meeting thinking I'm getting fired, and then a week later she's posting on her Instagram the 1-page plan where we just simplified everything, and she's just
So
like
good.
so many breakthroughs in this call.
So good. You know what? I'm curious if you find, because I've done a lot of work with sort of creative artists who are like, money, like money. I don't want anything to do with money. I don't like, that's bad. And then once something like this happens, right? Like, and I would imagine especially the fitness space, like you've got a number now to focus on. Like these are relatively competitive people,
Yep.
right? Who understand first principles, who understand getting like technique right, who understand where the right focus is, who understand coaching of like just the little tweak of, hey, could you just move your wrist a little bit to the left, right? Like once you give, I would imagine, and I would be curious to hear your take on this, like once you give them a KPI, for like a key performance indicator, right? Like once you give them a number, have you seen it suddenly, like, because I've seen this shift where, oh, now I understand, like I look forward to seeing my income statement because profit equals permission to keep doing this thing. Like it's the lifeblood, it's the fuel. Like, do you see this shift with online fitness coaches specifically? Like once they understand the game, right, that they become really good at playing it?
No, I don't. And I'm going to explain.
That's great.
It's not a number for them because most of the coaches I'm working with, they're making enough money. Like they're pretty high revenue coaches. So it's not a number for them. That's not enough for them to figure it out because they can make more money. They can turn on their marketing trick and they're going to make more money tomorrow. It's figuring out why it's important. So I have another client. She's actually a marketing coach, but she's a competitive bodybuilder. And her discipline is unreal when it comes to bodybuilding. But these are human beings we're working with. And so while they teach all their fitness clients all the behavioral cues to avoid and what not to do, because fitness and finance are very similar. You can make 100 analogies. Yep. So while they're teaching their clients, all these things to avoid, they're guilty of doing all of them on the financial side because they're humans. And so she's a competitive bodybuilder and just unbelievably disciplined in her fitness journey and not in her finance journey. And we were really struggling is like how to get her motivated. And finally, one day I said, she had just earned her pro card. I said, why don't you promise to yourself that you won't compete next year? Because she's in the off season. She's not going to compete for another year. You won't compete next year unless you hit these, these goals or these benchmarks. And they're action goals. They're not results oriented, right? I'm not looking for, you need a net worth of X amount. I just need you to do these following actions over the next 12 months consistently. Why don't you like commit to yourself that? And immediately I like saw it in her eyes. It was like, oh, that's what I need to motivate me. None of this other stuff is going to motivate me because I just know I can go out and make more money if I have to. But if I'm not giving myself the permission to compete, which is what I truly love, that's my vision, to just compete all the time, then I can't do this. And the reality is competing is very expensive, right? And so that's how it really ties back to money is like, this is a very expensive hobby. So if you can't do all these other things, you really can't give yourself permission to have this expensive hobby. And it clicked. And ever since then, things have been getting on the right path. I mean, you can't overnight change 35 years of habits. You know what I mean? Yeah. And so it's a progression, and you have to, it's like with a fitness movement, right? If you were to walk in as a newbie, never coming to the gym, and you were going to start deadlifting, right, the coach isn't going to put, a 135-pound bar in front of you and just say, hey, deadlift that, right? No, he or she is going to break it down into multiple parts. And I don't know how many parts, because I'm not an actual fitness coach, but like they're going to break it down into 10 parts, and you're going to practice the first step, which you're probably going to leave the gym that day being like, why did I just practice the bottom part of a deadlift with a broomstick for an hour? Seems really, really simple, right? And so I think as advisors, as we forget that, we come in, we give this like full on like financial plan of like, here, A to dream life. Okay, here's everything you've got to do. But like what we really need to do to make incremental changes that will compound over time is say, hey, here's a plan to get you from A to B. It's super, super simple. You think you can do this? And I was just reading a book called Changemaker by John. Yeah, I had to look. John Berardi, and he was the founder of is it Precision Nutrition, I believe. It was a big coaching company. Sold it a long time ago, and what he says is if they can't, with a confidence level of 9 or 10, 0 to 10, how, like, do you think you can do this, Carl? If that's not a 9 or a 10, it's not simple enough. You need to
Right.
simplify it more.
So good.
And so I think understanding that it's just about progress and not putting this like perfect plan in front of people, because at the end of the day, we're coaches too, right? I know financial coach is like a different term in our profession or industry or whatever. And we put lipstick on it. And so we call ourselves advisors, and we put our suits on, and we, our ties are, but the reality is we're all coaches, right? We're trying to help people make change in their lives. It's just their financial lives. And so, it's all about progression.
So good.
I don't even know what the question was. I just answered.
It doesn't matter because I was wrong. You told me no. Yeah, that was super good. Justin, let's just wrap up with this. Like, let's pretend like we're 3 years from today, and you're looking back on the last 3 years. What's the change you hope to make in the lives of the people you serve?
Ooh, I want them to obviously be wealthier. However, we're going to back that up and make that like, let's get rid of the dollars. I want them to be more confident in their ability to manage the money. I don't want this to be a scary thing for them that they're always running and hiding from. I want them to be confident that they have the right systems and plan in place where they're going to be okay. That's it.
Amen, brother. I don't know that I could say any better. Thanks so much for this chat. Super good, Justin. Thank you.
Carl, I really appreciate you having me on. Love what you're doing with everything you do. So keep it up. You're a great inspiration for a lot of us advisors out there.
Yeah. Cheers, brother.